as you can see. Soon we will have an army of symbiotes. Our volunteers will help us establish a new world order.
Big Lord, that cavalry history was never my best subject. I prefer phys ed.
September 11, 2001, two passenger planes crashed into the Twin Towers. One plane crashed into one tower. And the second plane crashed another tower. All the news channels started to cover this thing.
A big explosion has just occurred. Everyone is running from the entire financial district now. The smoke is filling the entire area. Let's go! Come on, go, Brad, go!
All the people who were around the building, all the TV channels and reporters, all of them went into panic mode. Something such was happening on that day was just an unimaginable event for the whole of America. When the first plane crashed into the tower, all the people around there were in massive shock. So many people were in misunderstanding that maybe the pilot of the plane had suffered from a heart attack. That's why the plane crashed into the tower. All the news channels were covering it live, but the entire story turns when the second plane crashed another building. Then this crash was seen live by the whole world. This was the biggest terror attack in the history of America. 9/11 was the worst day in the history of America. But this is just the one side of the coin. The other side of the coin gave birth to a very scary way of exposing the evilness of America, which is the culture of the conspiracy theories.
Jesse, what would you have done on September the 12th, 2001? What would you have done if you'd been president?
What would I have done?
Yeah.
I would have done a legitimate investigation to find out what exactly happened on 9/11. How did they know who did this so quickly like they did Lee Harvey Oswald? How quick they knew Lee Harvey Oswald killed Kennedy.
Because the people who did it were identified and we knew who they were.
Well, then why couldn't we have stopped them beforehand if they were identified and we knew who they were?
It was a failure of intelligence. Everyone's accepted
No, it wasn't. We knew before with Condoleezza Rice's memo on August 6th when it stated right in the memo Bin Laden to steal planes and run them into buildings. And more stuff is coming out now also, how much the Bush administration ignored the intelligence. It was almost like they ignored it because they wanted it to happen.
Good evening. Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack.
Ignoring the failure of intelligence by President Bush was not a mistake. In fact, it was the part of their plan. The most fascinating thing is that one-third America believes that whatever just happened was not a terror attack. In fact, it was a successful government plan. On the morning of 11th September 2001, President Bush was in elementary school. In a few moments, first plane crashed into one tower, and when the second plane hit, Andy Card whispered in his ear the news that a second plane had hit the World Trade Center. And what was the reaction of President of the United States? Just waited and waited for, moving head up and down, relaxed, like everything were going good according to the plan. In fact, everything was going good with them, because it was part of their plan. Osama bin Laden, the leader of Al-Qaeda, made a plane. His plan was to attack America, and Osama wanted this attack on huge level. Let me tell you clearly, Osama was not able to attack America with American passenger planes. And you know what? It was like impossible that a helpless leader of Al-Qaeda would get control over two passenger planes inside America and run them into the buildings. Okay, let's agree that Osama planned to hit those planes into the World Trade Center and he succeeded. The Twin Towers were the most iconic buildings in America, and the hitting of a single plane could not collapse the whole tower. So it means that there was not a terror attack. In fact, it was the start of the world's biggest conspiracy theory behind this attack. The reason behind the collapse of both towers was not the planes. Indeed, they were bombs.
Bomb in a
When both planes crashed into the Twin Towers, there was a fire in both buildings, and in few moments, one building collapsed, and after that, another building also collapsed entirely. Now listen carefully. Fire cannot collapse the entire building, and as I showed, there were bombs in the lobby, and bombs hit the lobby first.
What happened?
We was in an explosion. We was in the lobby, and the third explosion, the whole lobby collapsed on us.
What was it like? What was it like?
Horrible.
It's like hell. You don't want to know.
The whole building just collaped on us inside the lobby.
People don't understand. There may be more. Any one of these fucking buildings can blow up. This ain't done yet.
That's what I can say. I don't know what. We saw a shadow. It looked like a plane. Next thing we know, it was boom, and the floor started shaking. And then we saw debris fall down, and next thing we know, we had to get out of the building. We stuck on the stairs for a while. We finally got down to the lobby. Then we get to the lobby. It was this big explosion.
Now you'll be thinking about how there can be bombs inside the World Trade Center. Stealing the planes and hitting them into the buildings was, somehow possible for Osama bin Laden, but the detonation of bombs inside the World Trade Center is beyond the authority of every terror group. Let me tell you, terror groups are far away. Even an enemy country could not plan such attacks in America. With these bomb explosions even before the crash, it becomes clear that all the drama was pre-planned by the US government. There was no involvement of any terror group, and this type of high-level attack on America is beyond the authority of every terror group, including Al-Qaeda. A few days later, Osama bin Laden himself confessed, "I am not responsible for this attack, nor was Al-Qaeda having an impact on this attack." But after 3 years, a public tape recording was published by Osama bin Laden where he acknowledged the attack and took responsibility for it. From this, it is understood that Osama bin Laden was forced by the US government to accept this thing. Now, massive question arises, why did the US government do such like this? Because the US government wanted the reason to invade Afghanistan and Iraq.
On my orders, the United States military has begun strikes against Al-Qaeda terrorist training camps and military installations of the Taliban regime in Afghanistan. These carefully targeted actions are designed to disrupt the use of Afghanistan as a terrorist base of operations and to attack the military capability of the Taliban regime.
Just after 23 days, America invaded Afghanistan and started the war, which ended up killing millions of innocent people.
On my orders, coalition forces have begun striking selected targets of military importance to undermine Saddam Hussein's ability to wage war.
And after 1.5 years, American government invaded Iraq as well, which also ended up killing hundreds of thousands of innocent Iraqis. This was not the planning of months or years. In fact, this was prepared since decades by the big secret societies, and they were deliberately trying to implant this event in every individual's mind worldwide. The reason I am saying that this is the planning of decades is because for many years, the big secret societies were in aim to make this event part of every game, show and cartoon. Through the media, whatever we have seen over the last 20 and 30 years was somehow related to this event. Whatever movies we have seen, cartoons we have seen and their posters, through all these, we were prepared for this event, 9/11. Even more interesting is that the idea that two planes will crash into the Twin Towers on the specific date of September 11, 2001. Each and every show openly indicated to us that this event was going to happen on September 11, 2001. They deliberately spread the awareness that on specific date, September 11, two planes would crash into the most iconic buildings of New York. In fact, they installed an entire idea in every individual's mind. Early on, they made a space in our minds for the possibility of 9/11 so that people do not be made about what has happened. The way buildings were disappearing from the city was just like watching a Hollywood movie. Look carefully. Do you think this little fire can be the reason for a building collapse? Absolutely not. I have already given you the reason, which was a demolition. Now you'll be thinking, what's a demolition? The process of a demolition is the systematic destruction of a building, typically carried out using heavy equipments and techniques to safely remove the materials and clear the site. You might be thinking that if the demolition theory of 9/11 is true, then some people perhaps already knew that something was going to happen. What if I name those people as well who knew perfectly well that 9/11 was going to happen. After a few moments of 9/11 happened, Elon Musk asked Donald Trump about the main reason why the buildings collapsed. What Donald Trump said, listen carefully.
Donald, you're probably the best known builder, particularly of great buildings in the city. There's a great deal of question about whether or not the damage and the ultimate destruction of the buildings was caused by the airplanes, by architectural defect, or possibly by bombs or aftershocks. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, it was an architectural defect. You know, the World Trade Center was always known as a very, very strong building. Don't forget, that took a big bomb in the basement. Now, the basement is the most vulnerable place because that's your foundation. And it withstood that. And I got to see that area about 3 or 4 days after it took place because one of my structural engineers actually took me for a tour because he did the building. And I said, I can't believe it. The building was standing solid and half of the columns were blown out. I mean, so this was an unbelievably powerful building. If you know anything about structure, it was one of the first buildings that was built from the outside. The steel, the reason the World Trade Center had such narrow windows is that in between all the windows, you had the steel on the outside. So you had the steel on the outside of the building. That's why when I first looked, and you had big, heavy I-beams, when I first looked at it, I couldn't believe it because there was a hole in the steel. And this is steel that was, you remember the width of the windows in the World Trade Center, folks. I think you know, if you were ever up there, they were quite narrow. And in between was this heavy steel. I said, how could a plane, even a 767 or 747 or whatever it might have been, how could it possibly go through the steel? I happen to think that they had not only a plane, but they had bombs that exploded almost simultaneously, because I just can't imagine.
Larry Silverstein, a businessman who had taken both the Twin Towers on lease for 99 years. Just before 2 months, he is taking terrorism insurance. He took terrorism insurance just because he knew that something big had to happen. Let me tell you one more fun fact. On 11 September 2001, there was a proper meeting of Michael Jackson at the Twin Towers. But fortunately, he couldn't attend that because Michael Jackson slept late that night. According to a report, Michael Jackson didn't attend that meeting due to overslept, which was a great fortune for him. This is also the reason they have given. I don't think that this was the real reason for Michael Jackson not attending that meeting. Michael Jackson was a powerful and popular celebrity of America, and I'm sure that Michael intentionally refused to attend that meeting because he knew exactly that 9/11 would be the date to remember.